Hello, Candy, can you hear us?
I sure can.
Awesome, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, we'll begin the meeting. It is Tuesday, May 27th of 2025. This is the Stoughton City Council meeting. The first order of business would be the roll call.
Okay, Abel,
Here.
Nino,
Here.
Caravello,
Absent.
Wozniak Scanlon.
Here.
Okay, Hirsch,
Here.
Jensen,
Here.
Tillison,
Tankin.
Reeves,
Here.
Butler,
Here.
Schumacher,
Here.
Bonneau.
Here.
Okay, we currently have 9 alders present. Sherlucky will be arriving late, and Caravello and Wozniak Scanlon are absent and excused.
Wozniak Scanlon is here, and I just heard a door, and Caravello just walked in the room.
Awesome. Well, then we will be looking for Sherlucky to phone in later.
All right, thank you.
Thank
We
you.
are certified in compliance with open meeting laws. Nobody is signed up to speak at the public comment, so we'll go into communications and presentations. Any communications from alders?
Sure.
Go ahead, President
I
Schumacher.
thought that Alder Tilson had done an excellent job at the memorial ceremony yesterday.
That's it?
And it was a fantastic ceremony, and at the Legion afterward. That was a great ordeal.
All right. They told me my speech was too short. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I think your speech was excellent, Mayor. Is a paragraph, to the point, in and out. Let's go have some aquavit.
All right, any other communications from alders? Alderperson Hirsch.
I just want to remind everybody that gazebo music starts this Thursday. So come out and enjoy the music.
All right, any other communications? I have one. I wanted to let the council know that Director Muntz Pritchard had a conversation with Yahara Bay Distillery, and they are still planning on coming to council, but we're looking maybe July-ish now, just so you know, so in case you're wondering what's going on there. And I can give you another quick one. There is pavement that went in today at Matt Park, so things are coming together quite nicely there, so we appreciate the work from Public Works and the Park and Rec Department, as well as the contractors are doing a great job down there. That's all I had. And we'll go into the introduction of the historical facts of Stoughton. What do you have tonight?
Because in the past I've been kind of failing to adequately cover more recent history, a lot of things have been, pretty far back in time with it. So here are a few more things that are in more recent history in the last 60, 70 years instead of the last, 140 years or so. So in 1962, the council had approved the first mutual aid pact with Dane County, at least with the firefighters at that time. In 1964, there was an ordinance adopted to prevent drinking in vehicles. Alcohol. So in 1965, there was an approved plan for a new bathhouse at the swimming pool. Does anybody know where that one would have been? Greg, you know where that would have been?
Where it is now.
Is it?
The new one at Control Beach. Where's the mud hole at?
Yep. In 1975, there was a motion to ban smoking in the council chambers that was defeated 9-3. So Smoke them if you got them. In 1976, there was a vote to purchase property on Division Street for the senior center. In 1979, there was a vote for a reprimand to then Governor Lee Dreyfus for not recognizing May 17th as a holiday. That one did pass.
What is it? Oh, for
Yep. And in 1983, there was a vote to require all city employees to retire by the age of 70. That's all.
Don't look at me when you say that. I'm not 70. All right, thank you for that. We do have some presentations, and I'll queue up the first one. Mark, you can come on up and you can introduce yourself while I'm trying to find this. Let's see, I hope it's this one. All right, this should be it. And let me, if I go into presentation mode, sometimes it does in advance. So I'm just gonna bring this so we don't lose the screen. And then I think it's gonna work.
Yes. Good evening. It's great to be with you tonight. My name is Mark Peterson. I serve on PAT's board here in Stoughton, and it's an honor to be invited to share a little bit about our mission and direction in this community as well. I'm going to pass something around. This was a Christmas cards we put together, not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before. And I just want you to take a moment and look at the picture itself. I'll come back to it later. Oh, these cards, yeah. Yeah, you can do that. Sure, you can give each one of those that. The housing advocacy team of Stoughton is organized with the purpose of addressing affordable needs and housing needs of the Stoughton area, particularly in the Stoughton area school district. And we do so through private entities, but also through businesses and other ways. But we have been getting our word out as quickly as we can. Try that again. Okay. Due to the increase of households not able to maintain stable housing, the number of economically disadvantaged children in our Stoughton area school district has dramatically increased over the past decade, often resulting in homelessness. And the struggles for families and children, housing is an imperative for children to allow them to succeed and thrive in school. Housing is important for children's physical and emotional well-being, and housing, secure housing is needed for children to have the mental energy to enter into the classroom. After we were one of the organizations that benefited from the Set into My Run, and we sent out all our thank yous. We had a host of people who had donated to us, and we were so grateful for it. But Tim Norris, he's a mystic from Connecticut, sent back this note, a thank you note that kind of reaffirms this. He said, you work for a great cause. My wife and I are dedicated water skippers through more than 40 years writing for daily newspapers. But we've covered and seen firsthand the benefits of housing for so many people otherwise dismissed. I started giving to Habitat for Humanity almost 50 years ago while working in Jimmy Carter's campaign. And I've seen what home ownership means to otherwise homeless people afflicted with punishing upbringings and addictions and personal crisis and neglect. I love Setting My. Only sorry I can't give more because I'm so far away. He advocates on the fact that when you have secure housing, children are happier. You get a chance to look at that card. This was our second family that graduated through our STEP Step Forward program. And that family was a mother and 2 children, and the oldest daughter created that card. Before their housing, when she drew pictures of her family, there were never smiles. After they were in the house and they were asked to design that card, she'd do it with smiles. A happy and secure home offers healthy children. Presently, right now, we have 14 families who are homeless in Stoughton. And of those, we'll go to the next slide. Of those, there are 30 children who are homeless in this community. Right now, we are housing 2 families. One family, we partnered with Stoughton Hospital, who graciously gave us one of the homes that we're renting to a family with 4 children. In another family, we are renting a condo in the south part of Stoughton, and they have 5 children. So at the present time, we have taken 9 homeless children and provided a home over the past 2 years. We also have 1 senior that we are also housing as well. Next slide, please, Tim. The number of children designated as unaccompanied in high school are 5 at the present time. We began with an idea that we would build a 4-unit condo unit on Pine and Main Street. This was back before COVID hit. We had partnered with the Housing Partnership for Housing Development, who had a lot of experience in affordable housing, and then COVID interrupted. And then prices of housing went completely sky high. And the company that we were working with, or the organization that we were working with, went through 2 leadership changes as well. So we pivoted and we moved it to a program that we now call the Step Forward program. Step Forward works from the ownership of land and building to working with rental properties and landlords. Modeled after 2 successful programs in Edgerton and Janesville. You may have heard of these organizations. One is ECHO with an E, and one is ECHO that just ends in O. 2 very good organizations that help homeless families receive housing in each of those communities. We learned a great deal from them. This whole dream of helping homeless families started about 12 years ago, and we began interviewing vets for homeless. We interviewed Briar Patch. We interviewed other organizations like Porchlight in Madison that deal hands-on with homeless situations. And we began to learn and to take in notes. We went to other communities like Wanakee, and we learned about their sprinkle effect and how they worked at organizing low-income families in with medium and wealthy families in their downtown area by offsetting the costs in a beautiful way. So we were learning, and as we learned over a period of time, we began to put together this Step Forward program. Step Forward will secure safe and affordable rental housing for a maximum of 24 months and will allow participants to guide their own journey. We provide case management. Primarily, we contract case management with START and also with the Senior Center, because we are working with seniors as well. One of our residents right now is a senior woman. We provide case management services through those 2 organizations, and we give all participants accepted into the program the opportunity to set short and long-term goals to achieve independence and stability. We enter into the lease agreement with the participant, just like any other lease agreement. All the lease agreements from the landlords with the particular client hold, and we agree to support the participants by paying the monthly payment. then we ask those participants to give 30% of whatever income they have toward housing. And then over a 24-month period of time, we help them move to 100% within a month or two of that final 24 months, surrounding them with a lot of support. We'll support participants to achieve housing stability, increase self-sufficiency, and to explore methods toward greater self-determination. Wow. And our primary goal is to eliminate homelessness in Stoughton, one family at a time. We have 3 core beliefs. We believe that everyone deserves a place to hang their hat. That's why we have the hat symbol. HATS believes that everyone deserves stable housing and works to address affordable housing needs in the Stoughton area district within the community, both through public and private entities. Secondly, we believe that the shortage of available housing is a significant barrier in our community, and not everyone has safe and stable housing. And thirdly, we believe that housing first model is the most effective way to address the concern, while surrounding each family with case management. How many people are on our staff? We contract with the caseworker from START. We contract with a caseworker from the senior center, and we've hired a navigator who helps negotiate between the renter and the landlord. We have 8 directors. We had 7 as of last week. We now have 8, and we're excited about that. And all of our directors are volunteers. Our annual budget is $50,000 a year, and that's with grants and with donations. We keep it right around that $50,000 almost every year, coming in and going out for these homeless families. 6.6% of, or 3,300 are administrative costs. The rest goes directly into each of those families. Where do we get our funding from? Individual owners, faith communities, corporations. We have 2 really lovely companies that are helping us right now, and a number of grants that we are seeking each year. All proceeds, how do we use your donation? All proceeds go to the Step Forward program, which helps homeless families toward self-sufficiency. How can you help? Donate. And it gives you an idea of what it costs per family there at $1,100 a month. 2 of our families are $1,500 and 1 is at $850. $14,000 a year, or $25,000 over 2 years. How else can you help? Share the information with others in the community, tell our story, or give us an opportunity to tell our story like I am tonight, and get involved. And we also have more board openings as well as associate board openings, and we're always looking for extra leadership. So that's our contact information for those of you that like that. And finally, we believe that everyone deserves a place to hang their hat, and stepping forward in rental space with case management support. HATS is addressing the need for those unable to maintain stable housing, one family at a time. So thank you for listening to me. And do you have any questions? Yeah.
What's the average length of stay, or is there an average length that someone is staying in one of your rental properties?
As of June 15th, our next family to graduate from the Step Forward program and will be renting completely on their own. They've actually been renting on their own for the last 3 months. They are our 4th family that has succeeded in this program. 2 families, 2 of the 4 had already secured Voucher 8 vouchers for housing with after 14 months. So most of them are 2 years. That's our goal, is to bring it out over 2 years and help them get back on their feet. Sometimes people have incredible debt and challenges. So for us to help with the housing and then for them to get back on their feet in some of these other areas has been a huge help to two of those families. Great question, though.
I have two questions. The first is, do you guys foresee ever moving back to potentially building like you wanted to before the COVID hit? And then two, of the families that have graduated, how many have like stayed successful, I guess, or like have you seen any families kind of fall
Oh,
back?
those are good questions. Right now, the two families that have graduated that into the voucher aid are doing great right now. And all I get is glowing reports, or our board gets glowing reports. We don't know these people by name, but it's what we hear through the case management. And your other question, Percy, I think COVID was a blessing in the fact that I think if we were to own a building and have ownership and all of the things that go into all of that, that would have been a greater challenge for us financially over the long run. And we were already stretching it with a $750,000 million upfront support from this organization. But I think in the long run, it's better to work with with landlords who are really gracious. And we have 4 landlords we've been working with over a period of time, and some of them have been incredible. I mean, patient. They know the clients. They know the families. They know the situation some of those families are coming through, and they have been so gracious and helpful. So,
Yeah, I would add, so the lot they were going to build on eventually was sold to Habitat.
yeah,
We were able to connect Habitat with the nonprofit.
which is perfect. So I have Habitat move in there.
Yeah, so they're projected to start their build out this year. Their fiscal year starts in June. So you'll be seeing some activity over there. And the other thing that I think is really beneficial is a lot of the clients that you work with have credit score issues
Yes.
in the past. I'll let you elaborate on how
Yeah,
you guys
and
can.
credit score issues that would keep them from getting a rent. And that we help get their foot in the door. We help them get in. I mean, we guarantee the rent for 2 years. So we're guaranteeing those landlords a payment up front, so they're willing to take the risk. In some occasions, we have to do a double deposit, but how we work that deposit is kind of a beautiful thing. We put the deposit in, let's say it's $1,500 deposit like we have on 2 of our rentals right now. If everything goes really smoothly and there's no damage and there's none, and that deposit is going to come back, that deposit then comes back to that family. So that secures them a nice down payment when they move on to another place, which is just another added benefit. And they don't know that up front, but that's the board's policy right now. Yeah.
So after the 2 years, they have to find a new place to live, or do you keep them in that same place, and then you find a new place for another family?
The beauty, yeah. Another excellent question. The family that's moving out on June 15th, they just signed a lease for that same place. They're going to stay right there. That works out slick because then they don't have to pick up that whole family and transition them again. And so far that's worked really well. We would love it if we had, a rental or 2 that would pop up in some of the new development somewhere too, that would be dedicated, that Pat could work with, kind of like the sprinkle effect in Wanakee. That'd be wonderful, because then we could have other opportunities for other placements as well. So, but we really like to keep them as stable as possible once they get through the program.
Any other questions? All right, we had some literature that are at your seat. So if you have any more questions or you need more information, the contact
Yeah.
information is there as well. Thank you for being here.
Oh,
and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you for having, and thank you for listening. No, you can each have one. Keep them. And then, if there's other organizations that would like to hear more about cats, I'm happy. Our board members are happy.
Thank you. Okay, I'll set up the next presentation. It's going to be from Stoughton Utilities and Director Weiss here. Have it here.
Thank you, Mayor. What I really wanted to do is highlight basically our large infrastructure. I'd originally planned to actually split this up by division, but I think that bringing it all together kind of creates a greater context of kind of the things that we're doing with development and as they come forward and how we're reviewing those. So really the highlights that I want to make tonight is our utility infrastructure, what's its current status, what's its capabilities, how we manage growth and vision and planning for the future. So to start with the electric division, we have underground, I guess with the distribution part of our electric, and that's really the underground overhead, the poles, our protection device, the transformers. Our service territory is about 55 square miles. We serve the city of Stoughton and surrounding townships. About 27% of our customers are actually rural and outside the city limits. 44% of our infrastructure for conductors is overhead, 57% is overhead, and that really is a highlight. We have a very large rural infrastructure or service territory, and then we have about 217 miles of primary electrical distribution conductors that we maintain. So with that, we have 4 substations. They're highlighted there. Sorry, it's really small. But we have have east substation, west substation, north substation, and south substation. And ultimately what a substation does is we have transmission that feeds to that substation at 69 kV, and then we actually step that down to 12.47 so that we can distribute it out to our customers. We actually do monthly substation checks at each of the substations, and then every 4 years, rotating by substation, we actually have a third party come in and we do all the testing of that substation and make sure that everything is in good shape. Our oldest substation actually is on County Road B. That's our north substation, and that was originally the original transformer, or one of them is from 1989. And then our west substation out across from Walmart is our newest, and our transformers there are from 2018. So with the area that we serve, for the townships that we serve are in Dane County. We do have a small area in Rock County that we also serve. Each substation actually has 2 transformers. So by nameplate, each of those transformers have the ability of 12 megawatts. And so we have a capacity of 92 megawatts. And over the past 5 years, our average monthly demand on our distribution system has been 24.8 megawatts, with a system peak of 38.1 megawatts. So we've got 92 megawatts of capacity, but our highest peak was 38. On to the water. So our distribution system is really made up the water mains, the hydrants, the valves, water services, curb stops. The system basically is what we take, we actually pump the water and then we distribute it out to the customer. That customer contact basically is where it becomes the customer's after the curb stop. So then that becomes their infrastructure. We have 78 miles of water main. 58% of the distribution system is less than 35 years old. That does, though, leave the other 42% that is older than that. We do, and I've got a little bit of a typo here, we do flush hydrants once per year. Dead-end hydrants, though, we try to actually flush those monthly to increase water quality. Of course, winter kind of affects that sometimes, but assuming that we've got good weather, we try to do that once per month. DNR requires that we do that one time every 2 years. We do valve operations, so basically if there's a water main break, we're able to isolate that break. We actually turn those valves once per year to make sure that they operate correctly, and DNR requires that we do that once per every 2 to 5 years. So our wells, basically that's where we pump our groundwater from. We have 4 of those. We treat the water and then we distribute that to the system. We do rehab on each of the 4 wells every 6 to 8 years, depending on the well. We have certain ones that we do actually do maintenance more often than others. And with that, DNR recommends, there's no requirement to actually do that, recommends that we do that every 10 years. We do have water storage, and really water storage is for 2 reasons. One, for capacity for the system, but really the towers themselves are for pressure. So we've got 2 towers and 1 reservoir with a total of 1.3 million gallons of storage. And we have a maintenance agreement that we actually work with a third party to do all the maintenance related. So actually just this, we're still actually, that water tower is still down. Water tower number 2, we did have it sandblasted and painted in the interior and inspected. So then these are our wells. We've got well number 4 on Van Buren. It was built in 63, excuse me. The rehab was done there in 2003. It has the capacity of 1,200 gallons per minute, and it's about 960 feet deep. We've got well number 5 on West South Street, built in 1978. We well rehab the last time in 2024. 950 gallons per minute, and that's about 1,100 feet deep. And then also with that, we have a reservoir where we get 400,000 gallons of storage. Well number 6 is on East Academy, and that was built in 1985. It was rehabbed in 2022, and about 1,050 gallons per minute, and it's about 1,137 feet deep. And then well number 7 is at Virgin Lake at Roby Road there, built in 97, and we'll be rehabbing that for the next time in 2026. And it's about 1,080 gallons per minute, and it's about 1,040 feet deep. And then our water towers. So water tower, Tower 2 was actually built in 1974, and it's got 300,000 gallons of storage. And Tower 3 was built in 2010, and it's got 60,000 gallons of storage. When we did the second water tower, we actually were able to eliminate, we had 2 pressure zones, and by including that second water tower, we were able to, so we just have 1 single pressure zone, which is, it's a good thing for maintenance and a variety of different things for the system. The capacity of the system. So basically, we cannot provide water per code. We cannot provide water outside of the Stoughton urban service area. In 2024, we pumped 462.6 million gallons, averaging 38.6 million gallons per month, 1.3 million gallons per day. Each individual well is a theoretical maximum. Now, I will highlight theoretical. It's possible that the city could actually operate on 1 well in theory. But in reality, there would be ramifications to that. But if we were to look at that, theoretical 43 to 45 million gallons per month could be actually that well is capable of, but we'd never want to do that. So we have a lot of capacity there, though. Onto the collection system. So collection system is basically all the pipes that direct all of the waste to the wastewater treatment plant. We have, and that's actually just the mains. The laterals that connect the customer owns those laterals. So we just own the collection system, that sanitary sewer main itself. We have 65 miles of sanitary sewer. And one of the things why there's a difference, we had 78 water, we have 65 sanitary sewer, because with our water mains, we want those all looped for water quality and for water main breaks to ensure that we can provide water. 58% again of that collection system is under 35 years old. 33% of the collection system is cleaned annually, and 10% of the system is televised annually. So lift stations. So if you can't have your waste flow to the plant by gravity, then you're required to have a lift station. Ultimately, the lift station then basically collects the waste. It's pumped up to another location within the collection system and then flows by gravity for treatment. Currently, we have 6 lift stations. 8th Street, I would say I'd highlight that one because that is in significant need of repair or replacement. The other ones are in good condition. The Barberry lift station will be replaced with the new STI lift station, which we're kind of referring to at this point as the Greenbrier lift station. So we'll remain at 6 with the STI development. So the wastewater treatment plant. So don't know exactly the original plant, but based on aerial photography, that plant, from everything we can tell, has been there before 1937. That's on the far right there. You can kind of see there's some indication of some sort of treatment there. The current plant was built in 1975, and then we did hydraulic upgrades in 2003 and in 2007. So the wastewater treatment plant has an annual average. So this is basically per our DNR rating of the plant. So BOD is 2,500 pounds per day. Annual influent is 1.12 million gallons per day. And that's a 4-year average on both of those. As you see on that box associated to that, in 1974, when we approved the plans for the current plant, there was all these ratings that were completed of the plant. And I want to make particular note of these because we have went through development and CARPC review that has created some question as we've come forward with another development coming in. So that's kind of an important piece as we're going to get into with the next slide. So basically this highlights again what our overall totals were. CMAR, which you're going to hear more about actually today or tonight, is an opportunity for us to really look at how is our plant overall doing. It's an annual report card that DNR requires that we bring forward and present to you each year, and it really highlights the year before, but it also recognizes if there's opportunities with the plant. And we often get a D in the influent, so when it comes to the plant, we often get a D. This year I have to highlight that we got a C, so we're doing better. And I always like a high grade point average, so we're working on that. But ultimately what it's saying is that we have this plant rating in place, and we've got more coming to us than what that plant is rated for. DNR acknowledges that there's higher flows and loadings, but also recognizes that basically we're meeting all of our permit requirements, and so no additional action is needed. And the second column, or I guess I should say the third column on this same slide, references that with that hydraulic work that we did in 2003 and 2007, ultimately actually expanded the plant. But at that point in time, we chose not to re-rate the plant. So the urban service territory is an area, or urban service area is an area existing around a community that's basically has the capacity that's approved really to be able to serve that area. So basically it's a recognition that we have the infrastructure in place to be able to serve that area. The boundaries are like the outermost limits, and if there's a new development that comes in that's outside that service territory, they actually have to go through and get an amendment to that territory. Basically, no development's really allowed outside that without that amendment. CARPC, who ultimately works for DNR, reviews that, as well as DNR basically has an oversight of that process, but CARPC is the one that also ultimately goes through and reviews that amendment and decides whether or not it's appropriate. So I know this is a little bit hard to see, but I think this is an important boundary. So every time a new development comes in and that boundary is expanded, they take a look and say, okay, assuming this entire property from a modeling standpoint, so they'll model the flows ultimately that will go to the plant and evaluate, does the plant have the capacity? So there's a lot of area within that red boundary that has been brought into that service territory but has actually never developed. So I think that's another key important thing to consider as we kind of continue on with this. But there's a lot of area that's been brought in that for whatever reason that developer chose not to move forward, or when the original boundary was created, that area might have been brought in, but no developments occurred. So this was particularly important, and because of this statement, we have done some additional work. But I think it's important that the CARPC, the last time an amendment came in, CARPC had the following findings. The Stoughton wastewater facility, wastewater treatment plant, provides wastewater treatment for the amendment area. The average annual design flow of the facility is 1.65 million gallons per day, and the rated monthly design of capacity is 2.06 million gallons per day. In 2001, the facility received an average monthly influent hydraulic loading of 1.14 million gallons per day. With the additional anticipated flow from the proposed amendment area and recent development of the city, the average loading is expected to approach the rated inflow capacity of the plant. However, given previous improvements made and ongoing assessments, Stoughton Utilities does not foresee an issue with providing wastewater treatment to the proposed amendment area. The city did not have any issue meeting its WPDS, so that's our DNR permit for the plant. And I highlight this because the next amendment's going to have something very similar, because as we continue to look at these totals, there's a level of concern that gets brought forward. So again, as we look, and this is again that same diagram kind of showing the difference with the hydraulic improvements. So our official plant rating, we have more than plenty of capacity. We have, because of kind of this constant, there's been basically the last several amendments, we've had this kind of same findings, and we want to make sure that everybody's very comfortable, that we feel very confident in the direction. We have a lot of capacity for this development. So we met with DNR, explained all of the situation, walked them through basically what our current ratings are and what, because of the hydraulic work that was done in the mid-2000s, what our ratings were. And the one thing that you're at is a sort of chicken or the egg. Once you re-rate the plant, then you're required to meet certain new DNR permit requirements. And their recommendation was, but yet we're not that big, so we don't have that kind of inflow yet. So the recommendation was to hold. We can meet our WPDS permit, no problem, and to continue to evaluate the plan. So actually in the 2025 budget, we have a facilities plan, which will actually go through, take a look at the plant, see what work we need to do. We don't feel at this point in time, based on everything we know, we have plenty of capacity. The one thing I do have to highlight is that our plant is old. It is aging. We do have an ongoing, things are starting to get where they are breaking. We have kind of exceeded useful life. So I do think that there's something in the next, 5 or 10 years from an overall maintenance or replacement, because we're actually getting to where some of our UV system, we're concerned that ballast, that system is going to become obsolete. But right now the plant is working great. But we do have extra maintenance, I would say, at the plant. And I think that's an opportunity for us going forward. Following this, we also met with CARPC and explained, our meeting with DNR, explained where we're at, the facilities plan that we're moving forward with, and I think that created a level of comfort there as well. So how do we manage growth? So when a developer comes in, we actually require that they sign a reimbursement agreement. I think back in 2021, I'm going to guess, that you all approved that reimbursement agreement so that we're able to execute that directly. And really the important thing for us is that all of our time, because what we see is when we have a customer and they're paying their utility bills, they're receiving a certain level of service from us. But a developer is coming in and requiring a different level of service that we do not want the rest of our customers to pay for. So we ensure that they have that reimbursement agreement in place. We track all of our staff time. We track if we have consultants or otherwise that need to help us on behalf of that development. They're responsible for covering all those costs. And one of the other things that I guess we really is important to us that we look at is that when we're reviewing that development, what impact will this have on our other customers? So we really go through an evaluation and say, okay, this development comes in, what impact, say, downstream? We have had a number of developers where we've had a situation where downstream that sanitary sewer had the capacity today, but now if this flow is added in, that will actually potentially could put that section of sewer at risk, and there could be even backup into those homes adjacent because there's a capacity concern. So in those cases, we've required that that developer then replaces that section of sanitary sewer to be able to move forward with their development. And then kind of the vision and thinking of the future. For all of the utilities, we do maintain a 20-year CIP. We actually went through a big iteration, and that's one of the reasons we are moving forward with rate increases over the next 5 years. We mapped out all of the opportunities that we were aware of, particularly on water and wastewater, and it would be 2067 before we would actually have all of that infrastructure replaced. We recognize that there's no way that all that infrastructure could last that long, and in the meantime, there's going to be other opportunities that are going to show up that we may not know of today, or that may not be in that level of condition. So we've now been able to take with our planned rate increases to pull that down to a 20-year CIP, and actually all of the known opportunities right now live within that, at least on the collection system and the distribution system. The wastewater treatment plant is kind of its own item, and the facilities plan will actually help us plan for the improvements that need to occur at the plant. We do periodic studies to actually ensure on the electric we do every 5 years. On water, wastewater, depending on the level of growth, we do another facility study to just evaluate and make sure that we're moving forward in a good direction. We did a wastewater and a water study in 2015. We found that they actually planned out for such a large area that we've actually pushed off doing another study until we see that there's value in evaluating everything again. On the electric side, we continue to evaluate our substations, make sure that we've got good health there. One thing we're working on right now is to procure potentially a backup transformer. We did have a transformer that ultimately failed. We were able to get a nice deal on, during COVID when they were not available at all, we were able to procure one for a reasonable price, and so we are looking to see if we can get a backup just so that we've got that in place and available to us. On the water side, we do the ongoing well rehab. We also monitor our flows very closely, because that's one indication that there may be something going on with a borehole if you lose capacity. So we monitor, actually how much we pump from that well, and is there any kind of reduction with that over time. And then we continue to watch for emerging contaminants or anything like that that could be a threat to the water system. On the wastewater side, we have the facilities planned. We will continue our collection system. Our collection system has a lot of opportunities as well, but the one thing that I can really highlight in the projects that we've done over the last 5 years, we've identified and reduced I&I. So the inflow, basically because we've got clay pipes with joints every 2 feet, and groundwater will seep in, we've recognized the reduction of flows that we've seen at the wastewater treatment plant. So the work that we're doing is paying dividends. That's all I have. Any questions? I know that was a lot, but.
Any questions from alders? I think one thing we would want to talk about a little bit is, wastewater and potential growth of that area. I mean, it seems like we're pretty well committed down at the Man Park area.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's one thing that I would like to, at some point in time, our fenced area is kind of the area in which we think of the plant. Right now we have plenty of space. There is some green space in there that we had actually planned for additional sludge storage. But I think that's an aspect of the facilities plan that we will take a look at, because I would like to, if we know, there's actually a plan that was done, I think, back in 2016, where kind of the old shelter used to be located. There was a plan that area would become part of the plant for tertiary treatment. We felt that to meet our phosphorus requirements, that at some point in time we may need additional treatment. So the footprint that the plant currently lives within, I think there's a huge opportunity for us to identify a larger area and really put that in a place in perpetuity, because I know we've got other park amenities and desires to do down there, but I want to be very conscious of the needs of that wastewater treatment plant, and that over time we will need to expand that footprint.
All right. Are there any questions from alders? President Schumacher?
Thanks, Joe, for putting that
Thank you.
together. I wanted council to feel comfortable with where we are capacity-wise, both electrical, water supply, and wastewater, as we continue to talk about development. So as we get bombarded with those, that everybody understands that, yep, it's going to be a lot of housing that's going to come in, but we've got it under control. Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? All right, thank you.
Thank
Okay, one more update, and this one is coming from regarding this Stoughton School Resource Officer. So we have Dr. Keyser is here from the Stoughton Area School District. Chief Jenks is here. And we really just want to get the council kind of update where we are in the process. So far, I think I've mentioned it here once or twice. We had a conversation at one personnel committee meeting. We talked about it earlier tonight at finance. And then our plan would be to talk about it at public safety tomorrow night. And then I think it's next Monday, the school district has a meeting and personnel has a meeting. And ultimately, what we'd like to do, if the council and the school board are in agreement, is to try to bring this back here at the next council meeting with some recommendations. So there's some documents in the packet. I don't know how deep these guys are going to get into it, but they're certainly here to answer any questions tonight and any follow-up you may have. There are conversations currently happening between the city attorney and the school district attorney on some of the language, but I think we're mostly there. And if there's any questions for the city attorney, feel free to ask Rick as well. Otherwise, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Mayor. The whole idea of the SRO was to enhance school safety. We have been talking informally and formally for several years all of a sudden about this. We feel, at least I do, that we have a very good relationship between the school. Our officers visit the school on a regular basis. The idea of having an officer assigned would give us consistency with the school and with the students. And we're kind of copying what we had before and hoping to enhance the product which we had before, as well as the officer in the school.
Yeah, and I would say from the school district side, I'm coming in on the close of my third year here in the Stoughton Area School District, and I know when I first came, Chief Jenks and I met because I know that over the pandemic, the SRO program was not continued in the school district, and we developed the partnership and the relationship that we have right now. Since that time, we have been able to augment all of our schools with a full complement of student services. So we have counselors and school psychologists at every single one of our 5 campuses. And we have 3 social workers that work across all 5 campuses. And yet there's still a need for belonging. Our 3 pillars in our school district are literacy, math, and belonging. We feel strongly that if our students and our staff and our leaders in our building are still saying there are needs that are being communicated, and our partnership with the police department and the city can be augmented to support that through an SRO program, we feel that this is the right time and the right place to continue that conversation. That looked on the school district side, 2 years of committee work. And then ultimately bringing that forward this past January to the full board for a conversation and a board vote to go down this path. The mayor, the police chief, and I have had this conversation going on in the background. I've been having this conversation with the board through committee work over the past 2 years, and now we're at the point where we're bringing it before both the city and the school district. The board will take this up for action and consideration on Monday, June 2nd. They've been through one formal vote to get to the agreement part. They've had questions where the chief and the mayor and myself have answered questions. And now we're at the point where we want to make ourselves available to the city council to answer any questions. So I know the mayor just mentioned that some information, so I'll just close it out and open it up for questions.
Right. Are there any questions from alders? President Schumacher.
I want to thank you both for working at this and getting this back to in front of everybody here. I was on the school board when we voted first for the SRO, and found that was a valuable tool. I mean, maybe it went a little sideways, but anyway. I think that the agreement that you guys have put together so far looks really solid in there. I think we can bridge the communications gap that we may have had in the past with this agreement. The only thing I had brought up in the facility, or sorry, the finance committee earlier, was instead of an annualized reporting to the city council and school board, I'd like to see a semester reporting instead. That would give us the opportunity to give feedback or make adjustments per semester and then get it right in the second semester.
Thank you for the feedback, and I do believe that we've had good communication and took the lessons from our past to craft an agreement that establishes a base minimum that can be built upon. I know some at the board table are even wanting more frequent than even semester. This agreement allows us the flexibility to have a base minimum that we can't walk away from less than one a year, but then certainly allow for both entities to say, if you want more frequent reports, we can do that. And whether that is a joint report, I know people have mentioned in the community to me through coffees with the mayor and others around having combined meetings of the city council and the school district, if that would be one of these meetings where we would have a joint report that could satisfy one or more of those reporting. So one could be certainly individualized and one could be a joint. I only say that as that was the intent of crafting this intergovernmental agreement with as much flexibility for all parties involved. Thank you for that feedback.
Any other questions or comments? And I know, part of this is, we want to do things, in a more proactive manner, get to know the students, the staff, the administration. I know, Chief, we go up there as much as we can with kind of the limited personnel that we have. And I think, this certainly changes our approach. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, it'll definitely have the ability, or it'll provide the ability for us to have an officer on a consistent basis, not only in the high school, but River Bluff and the elementary to somewhat. It will also free up my staff that's working the road for other things. Right now, we average 1 to 3 calls to the schools per school day. And those calls can be relatively minor to something more in depth. Some are just cleared up in a matter of minutes, and some perhaps take days and follow up by investigations. Having the officer in the schools will, again, allow us to focus on some of the other things we hear about throughout the community, like speeding and parking, et cetera. And we're seeing an increase in our call volume every day. So between retail thefts and crashes, we're growing. We heard of Jill's report of how it looks as from her standpoint. I know President Schumacher mentioned me that he will want basically a capacity report as well. And I started looking at numbers like, yeah, we're starting to see that growth reflected in our own stats at the police department. Not really surprised by that, but there certainly has been an increase. So essentially adding another officer on staff, someone that would handle most of the calls at the school, again, would give us that much more efficiency.
And I think the agreement gives us an opportunity to do that and basically split the cost. And the majority of the work is at the schools or during the school season. There are some trainings outside of that. I think our timeline would give us an opportunity to establish some relationships in the buildings and do some training between now and the next school year. I think that's what you're looking at doing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the SRO basic program is a 40-hour class that is offered in August. We also are looking at other trainings available, from everything from mental health to addressing people with other issues, physical disabilities. We're kind of, again, revisiting crisis intervention. There's some new models out there. My hope is to, if we get this position, to have it assigned and get our officer to as much training as we can beforehand. Currently, a couple officers have expressed interest. They visited some of the other school districts locally. It did kind of what we call like a ride-along, sit-along. And just in the brief communications I had with them, they really learned that a lot of the SRO day in, day out activities is really centered on building relationships, mostly with students, some with staff, but Monona told us that about 75% of their time is just relationship building.
Yeah, and I think that also gives us an opportunity for those officers that do that training to teach their peers here in the department, which is something I think would be really helpful as well. It would be more systematic than just an individual going through the training. With the new schedule, I think there's more opportunity for those collaborations.
Yeah, absolutely. The SRO would also serve as a liaison, just communication-wise. So coming in on Monday, if there was an incident that happened over the weekend that might make someone somewhat vulnerable during their school day, would be able to relay that information directly. We have in the past, but I do feel that we're not catching them all. I know you and I have texted at times, and I've missed one or two, and like with the SRO, I believe we'd have that pinned down where we'd be, you know, more consistent with our communications.
Yes, and I would say part of the intergovernmental agreement and information exchange works both ways. So if there are things that we know potentially could crop up over a weekend or going into the summer, having that SRO position be able to communicate back to the department, hey, you know, we've been working with this. This is a tender situation, and more importantly, if we are aware, the chief mentioned at the board presentation, there are individuals in the community that have safety plans. Certainly building relationships and knowing how to de-escalate situations with some students can be a help. So it is really truly trying to build a stronger bond between the community and the school district. As I've been mentioning the last almost 3 years now, this community and this school district is so tightly aligned that you can virtually not see the line between the two. And this, I think, just further demonstrates the community and the school district's commitment to one another at just a new level and trying to learn, learning forward.
Okay. And then kind of process-wise in the packet, there's the intergovernmental agreement, which I mentioned the attorneys are looking at. There's, it would be an assignment. Is that how this would work?
Right, correct. It would not be a promotion. It wouldn't change the officer's pay or status. It would simply be an assignment.
And that's what the personnel committee is going to look at. Finance is beginning to look at the cost. Chief has a plan for the balance of this year. We would go into next year knowing that there would be a budget item and we'd have to be able to sustain the position. So that's part of the conversation. I think you also wrote kind of a cover letter that kind of summarized kind of the whole thing as well. And I don't know if there's anything from the city attorney that you want to add as far as where you're at in the process.
No, I mean, the MOU is pretty straightforward. So may have just a few like clarification things, but nothing really substantive. So, I mean, I think I don't want to say it's in final form, but it's basically anything that would change would be very minor.
All right. Otherwise, I mean, the plan would be at the next council meeting, we'd continue the conversation. So if you have any questions between now and then, feel free to reach out to myself or the chief. I imagine the school board's doing the same thing on their end.
Got one question.
Sure, go ahead.
And I just, reading this over, wanted to understand a little bit more about where the 50% number comes for the cost standard on the number paragraph 24 with that. So understanding that we're going to need more officers over time as our boundaries expand and new developments come in. The school district, though, is multiple areas around outside of just Stoughton. So is that just the city city proper residents are kind of more responsible for that? Where'd that 50% come from, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, that's a great question. The mayor and I have talked about that in the past, and I think of the agreement as something that is living and growing with us. So knowing that we are reestablishing this program and wanting to take the first step of establishing the program and then really looking internally from the standpoint of all of our properties. So knowing that as a city council, you govern one sector that is within the school district, and the school district governs a whole swath of other sectors. So we have a much deeper conversation moving forward as to what would be, quote, taking lessons from my past. The term fair share comes to mind. What does that look like in our context is a much more complex math problem that if we were to try to work that out would limit us from taking this step now and pushing it down the road. I think the timing is right. I think the people in our spaces are correct to get this off the ground and then address how can we improve this, and then look at the cost share. Certainly, if you've been reading the newspaper and take a look at, say, Verona and what they put in theirs, they came up with a much different cost share, and they have much different contact to us. So I wanted one to get this reestablished from my perspective and communicating with the chief and the mayor that, and then saying, let's start with a 50-50 split and then really look into those fine details in the next go around of this agreement. So having the applicable term, that was from the board side, really looking at, they wanted to look at from a year-to-year term, but from a cost perspective, we needed to look at, and it became very clear from the three of us sitting around the table along with our business manager, Erica, that we really needed to come at this from a 3-year piece, and then knowing that we have some other pieces that we can address moving forward. So that was probably much longer than you expected, but that's kind of where the sausage in the
I do
bratwurst
appreciate
comes
that.
from.
So it's just kind of understanding this is like 3 years, let's get this program up and started and running. And then if this is something that absorbs a good chunk of the time and is valuable for the police department, that we can relook at those numbers.
Yeah, I fully expect that we can look at the numbers. I think we can also look at what are other funding sources to the mayor. The city needs to look at its finances. We certainly have to build it within our budget, and our board members are looking at, are there grants and things that are available? And certainly with an established program, there becomes some federal funding grants that become available with an established partner, which may benefit both parties moving forward. And that could happen.
Yeah, the other thing that further complicates is their fiscal year runs different than ours.
Yeah, we go from July 1st to June 30th.
Yeah, we're on the calendar year,
Yeah.
so we'll get through that.
We will.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, yes.
Any other questions? All right, we appreciate you being here tonight, and then we look forward to the future meetings, and we'll bring it back here with hopefully some recommendations.
All right, thank you.
Okay, that's it for presentations. One last chance for council. If you had any communications, you could still put that out there. If not, I'll queue up the next thing. It would be the consent agenda. There's a few items in there. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Jensen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Reeves. Any discussion or anything acted separately on the consent agenda? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. There is no old business. So we have new business. R65 of 2025, and that's coming from the Finance Committee, and that would be Alderperson Butler.
This is R65 of 2025 to accept irrevocable standby letter of credit regarding developer agreement with Eldon Land Development LLC for Magnolia Springs Development Phase 2, and I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
I missed it. Who was it? Oh, second by Abel. All right. Sorry. Yeah. He blames AI for that seating chart. Anyway, Alderperson Butler.
This is a standby letter of credit for just a skosh over $5 million to protect us, to make sure that infrastructure improvements are made in Phase 2 for Magnolia Springs. And I would invite Attorney Matthew to clean up any mess I've made.
That is accurate. So this is an amount of 120% of the estimated cost of the improvements. So we require this just as a mechanism to make sure that the improvements get installed and completed, even in the event that the developer were to go bankrupt or not fulfill its obligations. So we can still pull on the letter of credit to complete the work if necessary. So it's a standard security that we put in all of our development agreements.
All right. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Next one is R66. That also came from Finance. Alderperson Butler.
This is R66 of 2025 to amend the 2025 budget for ambulance repairs, and I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderperson Reeves. Alderperson Butler, and the fire chief's here if you need them.
This is to fund repairs on the 2017 ambulance that needs some repairs to be maintained. As some of us remember, there's a fairly significant delay in the ambulances that we've ordered, and as a result, we're putting a lot of wear and tear on our existing equipment.
All right. Good summary. Any questions or comments on this one?
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
what's the age and hours on the ambulance?
So the ambulance we're sending in is a 2017. It's got 151,000 miles on it. And it's about 8 years old. We expect to get about 15 years of life out of them. So we've just, as call volume is going up and we're doing more transports to Madison out of our percentages, we're just putting a lot of wear and tear and a lot of corrosion issues. So we're trying to get ahead of it all before functionally we start running into problems with the rig as well. We've got a new one that's scheduled for delivery in June. And we also have one in the line for delivery approximately the end of 2027. So that'll get us back in track of an ambulance every 5 years, assuming other things don't go haywire like we ran into. But having multiple good rigs available is becoming more important. We're more often the primary and second ambulance are going out the door chasing each other. It's actually become a scheduling discussion we're having quite a bit amongst the staff. So we've got a 2002 that is sitting third in line right now that is kind of beat up. It's there because it is as good as we can get our hands on, and we have to have a spare ambulance for ourselves. Set into my weekend as an example, we had one of them that started getting a little questionable. We weren't sure whether we were going to get it safe for the weekend. Started calling around. It took about 5 places. We finally got Sun Prairie to agree that if we had one fail, we could borrow one of theirs for the weekend. So we had all 3 of them. So, which at one point we did have all 3 of them rolling. So.
Any other questions for Chief Rip? Well, thank you for keeping them running. I know it's not easy, and I know, our guys out at Public Works are pretty helpful too.
Yes. We actually took Bryce out there down to the inspection on the new ambulance just so he can see him at the dealer, got to meet some of the mechanics, start building some relationships down there. And then we got his guide on some of the things that were there, questions we were asked and everything. So for the amount of money we're paying for him, we're going to try and send them out. The price for the 2027 is looking to be about a $360,000 investment. So just wait till I come talk about fire engines.
All right, one at a time. All right, thank you. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, that passes. Next one's also coming from Finance. Alderperson Butler.
This is R 67 of 2025, to approve the contract for City Attorney Legal Services with Stafford Rosenbaum LLP for 2026 through 2029, and I so move.
Your second?
Second.
Second by Tilson. Alderperson Butler.
I'll try not to have to involve Attorney Manthe on this one. The current contract expires at the end of the year. This would extend the contract, or a new contract, from 2026 through 2029 with the annual increase in costs pegged at no greater than the Consumer Price Index. And in the presentation, there's kind of a breakdown of what those costs are. Both parties do have mutual agreement to terminate if needed. So.
Yeah, and I would just add that, I mean, it's for the firm, so it's not just Attorney Manthe, even though we like Rick, it's the team. And, they're working on all sorts of projects here within the city of Stoughton. They have experts in, environmental, they have experts in labor management, they have experts in litigation. What am I missing?
We do everything, so. Yeah, I guess one of the reasons I wanted to bring this forward is just in the event that the city wanted to go a different direction, you've got enough time to go through the RFP process. So, I realize we got another 6 months left on the agreement, but in the event that the council wanted to go a different direction, you've got time to do that. But I have really enjoyed working for the city, and I've enjoyed working with all the staff, the city council, even some of the developers. So, yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions, I guess, to the extent that I can. It's a little weird, this being on this side of the table, but for this agreement. But I think that's all I have.
He enjoyed it so much, he was working on Memorial Day, just saying.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's the kind of dedication we get, and we appreciate that. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. You can breathe. All right. And then this next one is R68, which is the resolution approving the Phase 2A agreement. I'm going to let you kind of walk us through that and kind of let us know where we're at. And I know we have some folks here from STI as well. So there is going to be a resolution in here, but I think we had some updates, so I'll let you go ahead and take it.
Right. So I think in 2024, February 24, we had a development agreement with Stoughton Trailers for that piece of land along Highway 51 between County B and Greenbrier. So there was a development incentive included in the Phase 1, but there's anticipation of a Phase 2 to develop the rest of the site. So Phase 1 was the headquarters building and a few single-family lots. Phase 2 is sort of the rest of that site, so it includes, remember a few months back there was a plat approval, so it includes, Phase 2 would be a few single-family lots, some multifamily lots, commercial lots, potentially some twin-home duplex lots. So what this agreement does is it essentially allows them to begin construction of the public improvements for Phase 2A. Yeah, so that's the map there that shows the different phases. So Phase 1, they have, they began work last year, and they're moving along there, but they'd like to begin the process of starting Phase 2. So Phase 2A would be that area on the right there. So it's the multifamily lots and some of those single families, but I guess the rest of the single family lots. So Phase 2B would be sometime in the future. I think they're potentially eager to get that one going as well here. But so Phase 2A, I guess what separates this agreement from other development agreements, like dealing with public improvements. So again, this agreement does not involve any of the finances. It's just relating to public improvements. So the streets, sewer, water, and some stormwater. So Phase 2A is going to include that area, but it also includes extending a water main along County Highway B to the intersection of Lincoln Avenue. So there are a few things happening off the screen here. Like I mentioned before, with the letter of credit, Stoughton Trailers will have to provide us financial security instrument in the amount of 120% of the cost of improvements to guarantee their performance. What's a little different about this one is the phase is split up into 3 sub-phases. So it provides them a little bit of flexibility to complete improvements and then allow for buildings to commence, primarily on those multifamily lots there. So Phase 2A is, I guess, broken up into 3 sub-phases. So rather than just completing all the public improvements at once, it would be split up into 3 phases. So 2A1, 2A2, 2A3. So that's a little bit different, but we met internally and city staff are comfortable with that approach, given that the other security that we've got in place just to make sure all the improvements are functioning as designed. The developer is also responsible for installing a recreational trail from the future underpass. So Highway 51 underpass all the way to basically the church on the east side of the property. So there will be a recreational trail. There's an exhibit down the list somewhere in there that shows it. I think it's the next one.
Next one,
Yeah.
all right.
Yep.
Let me
So
just reshare it then.
So they would be responsible for that trail. The area in blue, we're just waiting to complete the master plan for that park area that they've dedicated to the north there. And once that plan is complete, we'll have a better sense of the exact sort of location of that trail and the grading. So the recreational trail would be put in by the end of 26, as long as everything goes according to plan with the underpass and the city's sort of design for the park. But there is but the potential, if the trail can't be installed when the temperatures are right, or the climatic conditions aren't correct, then it would be in May of 27. So that's sort of like the nuances of this agreement. One minor request came in to change the conditions precedent. So there's a provision in there that says they have to record the plat by July 30th of this year. They have to get DOA approval prior to recording. So they've just asked to change that from July 30th to August 30th. So another 30-day extension just to get all the approvals that they need from the state before recording. But I think that's the broad level summary. Like the mayor mentioned, we have some representatives from STI here that can answer questions, or I don't know if you wanted to supplement anything I've said.
All right, I would open it up for any questions from council members. Alderperson Reeves?
Is there a, I'm glad that you're here, Director Weiss. Is there a recommendation, I didn't see any memo specifically from Planning Director, Utilities Director about this resolution because it's, I mean, it seems like there was a missing piece, like, are y'all on board with this, I guess, is the question.
We've been a part of the review of this kind of continuously. We actually met it on it today again to make sure that we were all comfortable with it, and we are. There's construction plans, of course, that goes kind of with this agreement, and we've been reviewing those as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
In these maps, I know this is, in a 2A and a 2B thing, and we're working on 2A right now. But the second, or not the second, I guess it would be the third egress point out of the development, that would be by the, was it Country Club Road. I don't see those in the maps. Did we vacate those out, or?
So that was originally included. The most recent plat, I believe, removed that intersection. They're reevaluating sort of the lot layout for those, and so Phase 2B might include that third intersection onto County B. So that was included as part of the approval conditions for the plat, actually. So if their access points change, they have to reevaluate the County B and Greenbrier intersection to make sure that it's in accordance with what Dane County's asking for. So, and those intersections generally are controlled by Dane County.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that, those intersection points, we really don't control.
Okay.
It's whatever the county
So once they weigh
requires.
in on it, then,
Mhm.
then we'll know the answer.
Mhm.
Okay.
Anything you want to add? Are you okay back there? Come on up if you want. You drove all the way here, you might as well be seen, right? Thanks for being here. And push the button there. There you go.
I'm Steve Trellman with MSA, so I'm kind of the land planner for this from the get-go, way at the beginning through now. And basically, we're working with the county on, we gave them a TIA, traffic impact analysis, that evaluated how those intersections would be controlled. It is requested that be a roundabout at Country Club if it were to go in. And some of our layouts altered to what the plat previously showed, more of a direct north-south from the intersection, but there might be a change in that direction slightly to functionality of that roundabout. That's why when we went through the plat approval, we removed it knowing that ultimately we're going to change the lot makeup for all the commercial, which is along 51. So it's already going to be amended through land division, and that's when we'll have a better understanding when we go through the actual functional layout of that roundabout. So it's intention to be there, but we just didn't have the information to move forward.
Yeah, and if I remember, you might have to acquire some land in order to do that anyway.
Potentially.
Yeah. So, yeah, stay tuned on that one, but, so it'll still be part of the development is what I think I'm hearing. And then your focus right now is on the other access, coming in off of B up kind of toward the north, I guess it would be, northeast, to serve the multifamily lots. Is that kind of what you're focusing on?
Correct, and that's partly why there's a sub-phase of the phase, because of the approvals working with the county on how that access would be worked out, especially how it tapers back into existing lots along B. We would have to purchase some of that if it has to be extended into their lots. So we're still kind of working through that process of that final design.
And I think the county's a little bit backed up is what I'm hearing.
That's accurate?
So we're trying to work our channels with them as well, so we'll see if that gets any traction, but they're certainly aware that you guys are wanting to move sooner than later on that, so we'll continue with that. Any other questions, as long as Steve's up here? Alderperson Butler.
This may be too far in the weeds, but on the map that's up right now with the recreational path, you have the connector to the church property. I assume that you're in discussions with them, because right now that would take you to the back parking lot. We wouldn't want people traipsing through the parking lot, I can't imagine. So can you share any vision of how that would connect?
I think that would go back to the city.
Yeah, that might be a question for Brett or Tony. I know there have been discussions about it, then they've been think they've been talking with the church. I don't think we've got the final spot for it yet.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge is the topography, if I remember right, on where to place that. And, you know, we'd like to be able to lead it between the church close to the school there. So if you live in the development, you could, you know, walk to school rather easily. So hopefully we can, you know, work that out. But yeah, that's probably a question we can take to Park and Rec. Yeah, that would be you, right? Add that to your list. Any other questions for Steve or anyone else from the team? Okay, anything else that you had?
I guess if there's a motion to approve, it would just be with the understanding that the condition precedent date be moved to August 30th, 2025.
Okay, so that's kind of an update to the resolution?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, that's the agreement, so it's, yeah, it doesn't need to be adjusted the resolution.
I'll make that motion.
All right, I have a motion by Jensen. Is there a second?
Wilson, second.
Second by Tilson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Thanks for being here. All right, next item is R69 of 2025. This is coming from the Utilities Committee, and I'm trying to remember who the liaison is. Oh, it's coming from Personnel? Okay. Oh, all right. All right, and Personnel is Sherlucky?
Yep, that's me.
All right, it's all yours.
All right, so this is R69 of 2025, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to approve the Stoughton Utilities Compensation Plan. And I would give this to Director Gillingham to explain further.
All right. Okay. Yeah, do you want to make a motion, Jonathan, or do you want the presentation first?
I can go ahead and make the motion. So I so move.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Oh, who was it? All right, what's that? Who was it? Lisa, second by Reeves. Okay, I'll see if I can find the presentation. I had it here at one point.
Tim, while you're pulling that up, I might as well get started here.
All right, I'll put it back in.
The resolution itself was very lengthy for a reason, and there's a lot of history in there, but I did put together a short presentation for you tonight because we have a mix of alders in the room tonight that may not have been here in 2022 when we initially put this plan in place. So Dr. Weiss and I have had a lot of discussions in regards to this plan, and we want to make sure that everybody understands where we're coming from back in 2022 up to where we landed today in 2025.
All right, I think I was offline for a moment.
Mayor, I don't know if you can see it, but it's on the left-hand side of the screen there.
Yeah, I can see. There
Okay,
it is.
there we go.
I'm trying to figure out how to share it. And my screen is. Here we go. Says it's sharing. There it is.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so back in 2022, the compensation plan was presented as part of the utilities strategic plan that they put together, and there was a full reorganization of the structure at that time. So if anybody wants to look at that, that's back in the council packet. The detail is also in August of 2022 if you want to reference that. There was a resolution that approved the comp plan itself, R-178, 2022, if you want to reference that. That was approved by the City of Stoughton Common Council. That comp plan had a matrix in it that was designed with a minimum, a mid, and max range. And it was based on a study that we did that looked at similar utilities within a certain range from the City of Stoughton. Next slide, please. Mayor? There you go. Okay. So what's occurred since that approval in 2022? In 2022, we initially made those market adjustments, and we applied those in September of 2022 because the resolution itself was approved in August. So we put that in place. And then in 2023, we started going off the rails. And the compensation plan was approved in 2022, but it was not followed for compensation in 2023. So to educate those of you that weren't here then, there were ongoing concerns regarding parity between utility staff and city staff. Keeping in mind that those are two different funding mechanisms. So city staff are funded through the taxpayers, different bucket of money. Utility is through the ratepayers, another different bucket of money. You all understand what's currently going on with the city. There isn't that much money there. It's tight. Same thing on the utility side, but you have a mechanism in place there that we can have rate cases that bring in more revenue to support that. So I'll let Director Weiss talk a little bit more about that when we get to that point, if that's okay. The decision was made in 23 by the council then to do what's called an across-the-board percentage increase. And I want to be clear that everybody understands that hasn't been through this before. That's not a true COLA increase. So we're not doing COLA across the board. What we're doing is what's available in the budget. So it's just an arbitrary number that's been selected that fits within the budget. And then that's based on the city budget, and it was applied then across universally to all employees. So the scale that we set up in 2022, this minimum, mid, and max, has now gone, like I said, off the rails, because we did just a straight across the board. So some employees are above what they should be paid, and some are actually below. So we've caused a little bit of problems there with our own program. Next slide, please. So what happened next? The cause and the effect. So the across-the-board increase, like I said, it caused issues with employees being above and below. There was an inherent risk that we had, which is retention and recruiting. Many of these positions are highly sought-after individuals that have specialized training and education. Let's pick a line person. Very difficult to find these individuals. As a journeyman, very difficult. As an apprentice, dime a dozen. But we want to have the majority of our staff being those journeymen that can actually work on the project, not be somebody on the ground watching. So again, it's very competitive, highly competitive, and as you all know, the market right now is highly competitive. Individuals are jumping for just a few dollars. Our benefits are pretty much similar, and we'll talk a little bit about that down the road here. So it really ties into that compensation that the individual's getting. So our goal at utilities is to pay market, and that was approved, like I said before, in 2022. So just to make sure everybody's aware, pay is based on position descriptions. So it's the knowledge, the skills, the abilities. And that's what makes the position itself when we actually go through and we grade that out and we do a full valuation. It's based on that position description, not just the title of the position. I could have a like title where I'm an admin assistant, but I may be an admin assistant that's specializing, for example, in the utility, that's also doing billing, making payment arrangements. Has the ability to make a payment arrangement up to how many dollars, Jill? Thousands of dollars. So it's very different than someone who's an admin assistant at City Hall who's transferring calls, helping prepare packets, different levels of knowledge, skill, ability, and position expectation. Next slide, please. So then in 2024, we had that across the board increase. Again, we didn't follow that 2022 plan. And again, it comes back to that funding mechanism. The money is there. We're choosing, because of parity, to just do the same across the board, but it's not actually COLA. Compensation concerns were taken to personnel in 2024 after the budget was actually approved. And Director Weiss and I went in front of personnel, and then we brought it to the Common Council for reconsideration. And the end result was that we ended up approving, you approved that for us, and we were able to actually apply that. But again, we're off the rails by having those employees that were overpaid. We weren't going to go and take that money back. So we added it to those that were under, but those that were over are still over. So that needs to be a correction that we would actually put into play by just temporarily holding that person until they get to that max pay or the pay that they should be set at, should it be midpoint. Okay, Joe, can you explain a little bit about the rates?
We consistently go in for rate cases. The couple of reasons for that is, of course, prices of things go up, but when they go through a rate case, they ultimately look at the cost of service. So they look at actually the customer classes to ensure that everybody is paying their correct share. So an industrial customer on the electric side, for example, has a cost of service. They have utilized more of our large infrastructure than, say, a residential customer. So they do an evaluation and verify that, yep, this customer in that class is paying correctly. Also, the Public Service Commission, when we do a rate case, they actually evaluate and go through all of everything financial. They review our wages, and they review, say, if we've got tree trimming programs, they go through all of that. What kind of sticks out for them, though, and where we tend to run into situations is where we have anything that stands out of a trend. So when they say evaluate our wages, if we go for a long period of time without any kind of adjustment and then we try to catch up, that will catch the attention, and they don't necessarily evaluate is this correct wages that should be paid, but it is outside of a trend. And so they will actually disallow some of that from our rate case, and we'll have to end up going into a rate case really in the end more quickly than we would otherwise had to have. The other thing that they do is they evaluate and make sure that our rates are fair. So to ensure that our infrastructure is being maintained properly, to ensure that we have got service for our current customers and our future customers, and that we're maintaining everything properly. But again, from a rate case standpoint related to wages, it's better to consistently, incrementally move as needed as opposed to big jumps, because then those can be disallowed in a rate case, putting us in a situation of having to go back forward to a rate case. It also goes through and evaluates, the customers are paying correctly. The other thing that I really like about going in consistently with rate cases, it's kind of like my analogy of the gallon of milk. You go to the grocery store, you buy that gallon of milk. It's incrementally going up, but you're not noticing it. If we wait a long period of time, we come back to our customers and now our rates went up, 15, 20, 30%. It's better to do that in a slow process consistently for our customers.
Something. All right.
So what happened is Jill just talked about the rate concerns as well. So we ended the year in that same situation that we just had corrected the year before. So next slide. Why are we here today? If you go back and take a look at the resolution itself, it's to approve the Stoughton Utilities Comp Plan, which you approved in 2022, specifically focusing on the frequency and the process. And we're asking that that be done annually. So we would be updating the matrix, as we've been doing all along, is updating that matrix so we know what those market numbers are. At minimum, personnel had said, let's look at every 3 years that actual market data. Let's verify it and make sure, checking to make sure what we're doing in HR actually would then be validated by a third party. So it doesn't end up in a situation where it's somebody's opinion. There's numbers there, those numbers have been validated. And that would be by a compensation consultant. Jill's team will be budgeting for that. She actually has money right now set aside to kick this off again for 2026. And the matrix will be used annually during the budgeting process to determine the compensation for the utilities staff, regardless of what the increases are for the city staff. And that we would eliminate that across the board. If we have the ability to pay those employees, let's do it. Let's make sure that we're staying market competitive and we're not losing individuals. And then those increases, instead of being a 1-1 increase, because I want to be ahead of the curve, instead of having it looked at once every 3 years, we really want to look at that annually and have that number validated through that consultant to make sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's, so that there's nothing else going on there. So what we're looking for is your approval to not approve just the matrix itself that you've already approved in 2022 with that resolution, but again, specifically the frequency being annually, and then the process that we go through, which was also approved in 2022. And that's it. Any questions?
I feel like you have pretty good sources to get the information from.
Yes, absolutely. It's very easy for us to gather the information because there are sources out there that pull the studies together. So you can say at that point, that data has been cleansed. It's not data that's coming in erroneously, such as salary.com or those types of individual companies that get paid for those studies. We get it through MEUW, APPA, calling out to other utilities, and that's why I'm asking for not applying it until the first full payroll in February, because it'll give us time to make sure that the numbers that we had actually match what was budgeted with those utilities. Did they go forward with the 2% or 4%? So validating those numbers and making sure what we're telling you is actually accurate.
All right, any questions? Comments? Okay, so it looks like we do have a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, that motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, let me get up. Next item is going to be, we have several first readings that are coming from public safety. So these will be coming from Alderperson Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor Swadley. For our first reading, ordinance 18/2025 to amend section 70-177, no parking, 7 a.m. 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. And this is, as I said, a first reading. It is basically what it's doing is it is removing parent 2 for parking on Hillside Street between Main Street and Ridge Street. And you can see the picture in there of what is being proposed.
All right, are there any questions or comments on this one?
Chief, if
Alderperson Caravello?
I just have one question, and actually the chief may answer this as well if he is going to address this ordinance request. But I'm just wondering if the folks that this may impact, if everybody's been notified and we've gotten feedback and all that sort of thing.
The topic seems somewhat familiar. I do not know for sure. We had a couple, again, residents bring this to our attention initially. We didn't go like door to door. We followed the procedure of, going through committee and now council. But I think what you're bringing up is probably a bigger issue, and we talked before with the East Street issue, yeah. Thank you for that word. So I don't know for certain. I can add some context to why this change was proposed with the near east side changing so much the landscape where Stoughton Lumber, Greg Machine Shop, all those businesses and industries were in play at the, through the years. The passengers rail station allowed, for places for the residents to park without being concerned of the time of day. The traffic flow at the time, IKI was behind there, the Stoughton Hospital. So having that narrow street clear on one side during the day provided, ease of access to the other areas. I can't answer your question about I guess I'm just trying to provide some context of why it was brought forward. But as far as neighbors knowing, I think that's probably a larger issue.
Yeah, and so this brought up a question I had earlier with another council member about what we should do going forward, because we don't really have a requirement to notify residents. Do you want to speak to our conversation, or do you want me to elaborate?
Yeah, I was thinking about future agenda items for the policy committee and whether or not we could come up with more of a standard process for how a resident might be, or how the residents might be engaged or notified, at least in this process. Because responding to one resident is great, but then when the rest of the residents are blindsided by the decision because they did not have a chance to learn about it before it was made, I think that causes a lot of concern. East Street. So that was the conversation. Is what can we do?
What we're discussing, I know it's not on the agenda, so stop me when you think I'm past the line. But we do have an ordinance for zoning, for example, where we notify residents within 300 feet. So the idea would be potentially put something on either CACP or public safety. We'll have to figure that out another night on how we should handle that. But that might be something that we would consider before we go forward with all of these. But we can certainly do the first reading tonight and then figure out what the council wants to do on the ones that are on the agenda. Go ahead.
I do have a question. I would love some more context as to, so basically there wasn't parking and now we're going to allow parking during the day. And why was this requested? What was the residents' rationale?
One was the parking ticket that was issued in the no parking that brought up, why is it still no parking? I'm a resident here. Why on earth can't I park here? There's not businesses. The truck traffic has gone away. Yeah. Then another resident joined that conversation too. Like, this makes more sense. We always have to park on the west side. We'd like to park in front of our house.
Yeah, and a little bit of history, and I might need some help with this. So on Hillside, there was a conversation because at one point there was a lot of traffic going to IKI on Hillside, and there was conversations about semis and whether or not the intersection on Main Street was appropriate to handle it. But I don't remember the context of all that. So this one has always been a little tricky because we go and change it, and then all of a sudden, let's say IKI building, we start getting semis going back and forth. Now we're going to get complaints about that. So it seems like potentially we might be chasing our tail on this one. And I don't like to issue citations for no reason, but I think maybe we need to do a little bit more history between now and the next meeting and see what the rationale was back then. I vaguely remember it. Does anybody else? Looking at Greg.
Yeah.
Or Regina, you might.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct, though, that it was basically because of the truck traffic that was going through there, as I think the chief was alluding to. Yeah. And I would agree that there needs to be a little more thought on this, because just for the reason you were talking about, if something else goes into that building and there's more heavy traffic in there, yeah, it's going to cause an issue.
Well, and I guess I'd chime in. I'm also concerned with the hospital expanding. Is there enough parking spaces in the new expansion that they're not going to be taking up a lot of the parking on this street and causing more problems for the residents or for any other future truck traffic as well? I mean, is the city, is this street wide enough to have full parking on both sides of the street and to get emergency vehicles in, is the question.
And I don't know if well, maybe for a call, but it's not a route to the hospital
I know, but I'm talking
But
about
yeah.
a call is
Fire or EMS.
Fire or EMS is
Yeah.
if you have cars parked on both sides.
Could be a challenge, and a snowplow.
All right.
If you want, I can get a measurement of the road. I don't want to tell you something incorrect. It does appear to be wider than East Street, for using that as an example, but I can certainly provide that.
That would be great. I mean, just because if you got IKA, but you also have the hospital now having, and again, they should have accommodated for all the parking that they assume, but if they're not, and employees are parking on Hillside, then we might have a problem.
Yeah, I think Stoughton Health, from what I've observed, is good for now, but they're not fully expanded yet, so
Right.
that might change. So I think that's certainly a legitimate
I mean,
point.
I don't want them walking, blocks and blocks, but then we might have to move it to no parking on one side of the street just so we can get emergency vehicles through. I don't know. You guys are the public safety people, so figure that out.
Yeah, my perception is what we're seeing too, is we're seeing a lot of homes and even apartments and condos that were maybe built for one or two vehicles, and now there's two or three or more because of, costs are going up, so people are trying to figure out a way to, survive, with the rising costs of housing right now. And one of the ways they do it is, they get roommates, and sometimes the development wasn't really designed for that, so how do we adjust? So I think that's going to continue to be a challenge going forward, so, but we can, on this one and the others as we go through them, if you see the similar concerns, I think we can try to address them all at once while we're out there. Any more on this one? It's a first reading. If not, we'll get to the next one. So the next one is our ordinance 19, and this one's also coming from public safety. Alderperson Jensen, this is the first reading.
Thank you. This is a first reading on ordinance 19, 2025 to amend section 70-183, no parking, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on school days.
Yeah, so this one here is a little bit different, right?
A little bit different, yep. So if you want to just go ahead and give us a background on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So during the road reconstruction and with the detour, and also an ongoing issue with parents dropping off students, the school had contacted us for some help for just moving people along. The traffic flow with the detour, again, brought it to our attention, but it seemed, at looking at it from a long-term perspective, it would be similar to our other schools where there's no parking in front of the school. It provides for just a clearer view. There's plenty of parking for staff there. That's kind of what brought it up. And then the next, I won't get ahead of myself, is also school-related to Kegon's, the campus itself.
All right. Any questions or comments on this one? Alderperson,
I'll just say that I did have a constituent reach out to me about this very issue quite a few months ago. So I am happy to see some movement on this for sure. And I also drop my kids off here, and it's extremely hazardous in the morning. So, anyway.
Any other questions or comments? So for clarification, so does this mean no, I'm gonna call it no standing? Is that a thing? Or is it just for parking?
It
'Cause people
says,
drop off there
yeah,
too, right?
drop-offs are gonna happen.
Okay.
What was happening, instead of just the parent pulling up and dropping a student off,
Mhm.
the parent may go inside the school for a while and cause a backup. And then it kind of prohibits other people from not only pulling up and parking, but also from exiting the school, the vision, like looking to the west. And so on, the school posted a right turn only coming out of their drop-off area, just as part of this, just being able to make it safer. You couldn't see vehicles approaching from the west real easily.
So do the parents drop off in this area, or do they actually get in the parking lot?
Well, both. Some pull in, there's like that horseshoe that's real popular. That's the parking. I believe there's one other, do you have another photograph that maybe illustrates the horseshoe?
This one,
There are 2 drop-off horseshoes.
or this one?
Actually, if you go back to the aerial view,
This one?
the 2 left horseshoes, the one on the right for the parking lot is a parking lot, but the other 2 loops are 2 drop-off areas. So kindergarten and first on the left and second through fifth.
Okay,
So you have cars coming in and out of those loops
yeah.
at pickup and drop-off.
So what you're suggesting is there's really no reason for the parents to even drop off in the no parking area as well, right?
I don't think we're going to stop that. Again, it's that those that park and clog it up. I think it's just there's the volume of students there. You're not going to have everybody using the horseshoes.
Mm-hmm. And then they have a crossing guard out there too?
No, they do not.
They do not, okay. All right. And I know that right now there's is it a 2 or a 4-way stop? We put up some stop signs, right?
That's the next ordinance.
Yeah. So that's all part of this as well, right?
Yep. So again, the detour clearly enhanced what was going on. That sheer volume of traffic, it's probably 4 or 5-fold of a normal day. And once we put the stop signs up, if we want to speak about the next ordinance amendment, I guess, the stop signs seem to make perfect sense once they're in place. That from safety day in, day out for students to cross, there was no stopping of traffic on Vernon Street at Chalet, so they would just have to kind of wait. This would provide them a chance to cross and slow down traffic and get traffic to hopefully stop completely. There were markings on the concrete for stopping. We just never had stop signs out there for whatever reason.
All right, so I'm kind of jumping back and forth. Was there any other questions about ordinance 18? This is actually, or 19 or 20? This is 20. Anything
That's
on?
19, I'll introduce 20.
Right, but I have the picture up for 20 right now. All right, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to point something out. I could be mistaken, but I think the introduction dates on all of these, date introduced, I think that's not correct. That's the date passed.
Okay.
All 3 of these.
Okay. All right, we can look at that. Yeah, because it's the same date in both spots. All right. Anything else on ordinance 19? All right, so we'll go to ordinance 20. Alderperson Jensen, you can
Thank you, Your Honor.
introduce this one.
First reading on ordinance 20/2025. To amend section 70-221, stops required at certain intersections. And this is the related situation at Kegonsa campus, there would be the stop signs, four-way stop, or three-way stop in this case, on Chalet and Vernon.
Yeah, so I guess what I left out before was we did place stop signs temporarily there. They're flagged. If you go on Vernon, you'll see them now. Again, I kind of explained already that realizing that this makes perfect sense with or without a detour to have traffic stop for students to cross.
Yeah, we also, I think, talked maybe about doing a flashing light, but might help. It also is already pretty busy there. It might be distracting.
Right. Maybe once, the traffic slows down, we add that.
Yeah. All right, any questions on this one? All right, hearing none. Then the next one is ordinance 21 of 2025.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ordinance 21, 2025, an ordinance amending section 46-5, City of Stoughton Municipal Code relating to duties and power of the police chief. First reading.
All right, and what's this?
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. This one was brought to our attention via an audit. So the Department of Justice completed their annual audit, and in it they realized that the chief was never given the official okay, if you will, to use the portal to run criminal histories for the purposes of employment. It's not that we were really doing anything wrong, but we need to have it outlined in our powers of the police chief, and their recommendation was to research that. We looked to some of our partners and just copied their language, ran it by Rick, and present it to you tonight. It's something we've been doing. It's just that we kind of didn't have permission from ourselves to do it. And with today's security and so on, it's a concern.
All right, any questions on this one? All right.
I've got
Go ahead.
just something I'm curious about. Is there a mechanism to do like a, a national kind of way to like check something out, like if somebody is applying for a kind of sensitive position with the city or something like that? Is there like something that's not just Wisconsin wide, but?
Yeah, and this allows that. So in fact, we do something like that. So we enter their name in the portal and it runs their criminal history nationwide.
Okay.
Do you feel we need to waive the rules on this one so we get it set up for you, make it legal?
That'd be fine if you, I don't know if you posted it as a first reading or if
It's a first reading, so.
It's not really nothing more than what's before you. It's something we're already doing. It's just, again, we're giving ourselves permission. And, after the audit pointed it out, it's, pretty important for us to follow up and establish a rule.
I'll make the motion to waive the rules on the first reading.
Is there a second? Second by Wozniak Scanlon. All right, waiving the rules, no debate, 2/3 majority. So having said that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that waives the rules, so you can introduce it as a second reading. Okay, somebody want to introduce it for a second reading? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Ordinance 21, 2025 for second reading. Section 46-5, parent G, City of Stoughton Municipal Code shall be created to read as follows, and then it adds in the duties of the chief, and I would recommend approval.
Second.
Second.
Second by Hirsch. All right, I think I saw Alderperson Reese.
Yeah, so I'm just going to piggyback on what Phil was asking, because based on the way I'm reading it, and is authorized to conduct a Wisconsin criminal history records check. So it's not clear to me if somebody's coming from another state that you can go outside of Wisconsin based on the way it's written. So I just want to be sure that we're good with that.
It is, so I think it's just that language, so it does allow us to do it nationally. So it's just, I don't know how else, that's what we call it, a Wisconsin criminal history check, because it's through the entirety of the system, not just limited to Wisconsin.
Okay, so there's nothing, Attorney Manthe, that we would need to add. I guess I just want to make sure that you can do whatever you need to do and we're covered.
I guess I'm not familiar with the portal or the system that you use. So if that's like the common meaning of the phrase to include like the background check, I'm comfortable with the language as is.
All right, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next one is R70 of 2025, and this one did come from utilities, and as I mentioned earlier, I don't remember who the liaison was. We just selected that. Was it you, Jordan? It is. You are. So
Try not to.
So it's ordinance, resolution
70, 2025, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to approve the Stoughton Utilities 2024 water, wastewater treatment facility and sanitary sewer collection system compliance maintenance annual report to the CMAR. And so we approved this 5-0, middle of this month, and I'll let Director Wise explain this.
You want to move for approval?
And I'll move for approval.
All right, is there a second? Second by Viano. All right. Director Weiss.
Thank you. So this is kind of always an exciting time. It's like our annual report card. So we evaluate our maintenance from last year through our collection system and through our plant. So it's just an evaluation that DNR requires that we actually do every year. And then we present it, and then ultimately we send it to DNR, and then DNR responds to it. So I'm just going to take, if it's okay, Mayor, we can just go to the last page, because that's all the fun part is, because that's where our letter grades are.
Page
All
32?
the other, what's that?
All the way to the bottom?
Yep.
All right.
All the other information basically is kind of like the homework that we had to or go through the ratings in which actually has created the report card itself up a little bit. There you go. So it looks at every aspect, and in many ways the aspects of this is really looking at our permit. So influent is basically everything that's coming to the plant. As you saw before when we went through the presentation, we've got basically loading, so how much is actually coming to us. But then BOD is really looking at the strength of that waste. And we typically, because of our plant rating, do not do well in this metric. We actually got a C this time. That is better than the D we usually get. I would really like to say that this is 100% because we were doing so many great things with our collection system and replacing so many pipes out there. I think it's a factor, but what I also believe is it's partially dilution as well. In 2024, we had 44 inches of rain. Typical for Wisconsin in our area is 34 and a half. We got 44.7 inches of rain. You know, again, our load, I would expect that our flows would have been greater based on that rainfall, but our loadings are our actual amount of that we receive to the plant is still up from what it would normally be. So I think it's a little combination. We are seeing the impacts of actually doing the infrastructure replacements, but we're also seeing some dilution. So that strength of that waste is appearing a little bit lower than it does on years where we have less rainfall. So for example, in 2022, we had 37 inches of rain. We got a D, and there was 34 numbers actually. This time we got 26, what they considered exceedance numbers. In 23, we had 31.27 inches. We had 36 exceedance points for that year. So there's a little bit of two things going on. We are seeing some dilution from having that extra, say, water in the system, but for what we've seen in the past. I still think we're making tremendous progress in the pipes that we're replacing. We noticed down at Mant Park last year the amount of flow that we were able to reduce just with that one pipe run that was replaced there. So a C is good for us usually in that metric. The next 4 items are really looking at what is the liquid waste basically that, after we've treated, so effluent, and how are we doing there, and how much are we meeting our permit requirements. And all 4 of those we're doing really well, and we've gotten an A in those. And also the scorecard is weighted. Those parameters related to effluent are far more important to the DNR than actually what we're receiving in the plant initially. The next one then is about the solids, that when we go through its process, we have the liquid part, we have the solid part, is our biosolids, and basically the quality of those, how we're managing those. We do actually take them out to farmers' fields, and they are injected into the farmer's field. There's only certain times of the year that we can actually do that, and there's fields that are actually permitted through the DNR to do that. And again, we got an A in that area. Staffing looks at basically how we're staffed and what we do for staff training. We have an A there. Operator certification, I'm looking at basically the certifications that we have, the continuing education that we have our staff participate in, and we've got an A. And then all of our financial aspects, basically Shannon provides all of the data about how we're doing financially, and we've gotten an A there as well. And then looking at our collection system, and again, I'll highlight that our collection system does have opportunities, but this really is looking at the maintenance of those. Are we getting out there and doing the flushing we're supposed to? Are we getting out there and doing the televising that we are to do? And we got an A in there as well. So our typical GPA is usually about 3.76, and this time we've got the 3.84, so pretty excited about that.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions about the report card?
I always have.
Well, you should. That's your area of expertise.
Still always curious on the inflow part. I know we've talked about this year over year, how it's really like a non-linear amount that comes in there, and whether there's some sort of weird underlying pattern underneath that.
I started to wonder the same thing because I was looking at these other, so I was looking at our C's and our D's, and I'm looking at the exceedances and going through that, and I was trying to take the years and kind of evaluate them by the months, and I do think it's worth, I'll put together, take all that data, because we've got a ton of data, and I'll put that actually in a spreadsheet and graph it out. Because I do, there's definitely times I've also noticed that in November, our BODs seem to be higher. And then I was like, well, what is that necessarily an indication of? And I'm sure that there's some, industry that must have a process in November that is affecting that. But yeah, I'll map that out. I'll provide a graph, and we can kind of take a look at that a
Sure,
little
you
bit
don't
more.
want President Schumacher to do that?
I'm sure he's got some kind of AI thing.
I usually do put chat on large data sets, so I don't like let it handle that sort of thing, and seating chart.
I just have being a nerd too. What happens in November? I'm thinking ecologically. That's when the plants kind of senesce and they're not uptaking as much water anymore.
Oh, that's a great point too.
And
so it would be a transition period.
Right.
But it's actually what's coming to the plant. In the plant, I could definitely think that we would have some of those kind of disruptions, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, but maybe. So you're not. So what I'm thinking is that you're going to have more water runoff in November because the plants are not.
Yes, excellent.
I'm just being a geek.
No, I would love to. I would like to actually bring this data to and we all brainstorm, because I'm seeing the same thing, and I'm very curious as far as what it is that to be able to help plan better, and I think it'll help us also be able to attribute directly back of, yes, we have done this infrastructure work and we've actually gotten these results. Because again, what we do find is that when we replace, say, a bad run of pipe, that groundwater still seems to find a way, so it'll find the next bad piece of pipe. So sometimes it's hard to see, are we making until the entire infrastructure and we got rid of all clay pipes, how much are we gaining? We seem to always see it in our data in the first couple months. Yep, we're doing better, and then it all kind of seems to find itself a new path, and we're about where we're at. But still, I think we're doing better overall. But I think that's a great idea.
you have a way to monitor where the water table sits? Because I wonder if that might apply pressure onto the system as well.
I would love to be able to do that. We do find that there's perched water tables though in certain locations, like particularly when we were doing 51 in 2019, 2020. We had a lot of inflow, but we actually had a lot of rain that year, so we had it elevated, and I remember bringing in a video in because we did an emergency repair there. That we hadn't otherwise planned to do. So we don't, but it would be nice to be able to figure out locations to be able to monitor that.
We have a calculator.
No, it just, usually when utilities has to come in and fix my line coming into the house, and they're standing in a puddle because they hit the groundwater.
That's a Hogan's Heroes reference. Did you ever watch it?
I have, yeah.
You didn't see
it's
that?
right by, there's an underground spring that feeds it, so that's why. And then last, I'll ask you offline about the biological remedy for phosphorus and that, but I'm sure that no one wants to hear about that sort of thing, but
I'm very
it's a
excited.
fascinating subject.
We'll look
anyway.
at the written AI report on that one. All right, anything else on this one? So is there an action on this, or?
Yes.
So will we have to accept it, or?
I think you're actually officially approved.
Oh, I have to go way back to the beginning.
Approve. Mm-hmm.
Approval?
Yep.
All right, there it is. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Number 17, we're almost there.
R71, 2025, authorizing the release of easement rights to a plotted utility easement on lots 32 through 43, 77 through 88, and 97 through 104 of Magnolia Springs. And so I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Hirsch?
Yep.
And I will pass this over to Director Wise.
Thank you. So just by mechanism, we have determined with the help of the city attorney, Rick, really a process to be able to address easements, particularly release of them. So basically we acquire easements a lot, but when we actually go to release them, we go through and take it to the utilities committee and we take it to city council. We are eventually potentially looking at bringing you something where we reevaluate that process. Because in the situation, this plat got recorded with utility easements over the top of stormwater easements. We were sharing with them that we wanted these utility easements. They also were thinking stormwater. We didn't see the final plat, so we had this overlapping. They've now recorded easements to be able to address this. We've got utility easements now, new ones in place. This basically is releasing our rights to the old easements. As a side note, the reason we don't want those to overlap is that we have our underground infrastructure. We'll have a transformer, a pad, or something like that. It'll impede the flow. It'll undermine our transformer. There's a variety of different things where we want those to be separate easements. But just process-wise, this was a situation where they were able to provide us the easements that we need by recording those documents, and these are the release, those that were originally recorded incorrectly on the original plat.
Anything you want to add? You're good? All right. Any questions or comments from the alders? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Item 18.
I can start.
Yeah, city attorney will start this conversation.
So this relates to the depot building. So we have an agreement to sell the depot building to the Cement Foundation, our Depot Hill Creative LLC. It looks like that is progressing in a positive direction. There were some issues with lot lines and working with the DOT in the county, but I think we've gotten that all straightened out. However, the Cement Foundation would like to just begin some work on some of the rehabilitative work on the building. So they would like to replace some doors and windows on the building. They went to Landmark Commission and got a certificate of appropriateness for doing the work already, so they would replace the doors and windows with period appropriate replacements. And they are understanding, like, if they were to do this, it would be sort of at their own risk. It's at their full cost and expense. If for some reason the transaction doesn't close, we still get the new doors and windows, and so everything would be in line with what they already got approval from Landmark for doors and windows. That's the primary thing that's going to be replaced.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, I would enter. Oh. Yeah, we need a motion for it. Motion by Jensen. Is there a second?
Wilson, second.
If you'd like to read it, you can.
Yeah, it's Resolution 72-2025, approving agreement for exterior improvements to depot building at 532 East Main Street. And I'd so move.
There was a second by Wilson. Any more discussion? I think that there's folks on there. I don't know if there's anything they want to add. Guess not. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Item 19, discussion and possible action regarding compensation for the Stoughton Utilities Director. Anything we need to add to that before we consider going into closed session?
I don't think so. This one's pretty self-explanatory, and it's not like the bargaining one where we sort of have to show a closed session is quote unquote required. Here, this is pretty straightforward. It's just discussion about compensation for a specific employee.
All right. So I would entertain a motion for somebody to read the closed session language. Anybody prepared to do that?
Yeah.
All the person able.
The council may meet in closed session per state statute 19.851C and 19.851E, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation of any public employee over which the governing body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. The council may reconvene in open session to take action on matters discussed in closed session, and I so move.
Is there a second? Second by Jensen. Any discussion? And I believe we need a roll call vote to go into closed session. Whenever you're ready, Candy.
Okay, Nino.
Aye, here.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Caravello.
Aye.
Wozniak Scanlon.
Aye.
Sherlucky.
Aye.
Hirsch.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Tillison.
Aye.
Reeves.
Aye.
Butler.
Aye.
Schumacher.
Aye.
Vanot.
Aye.
And Abel.
Aye.
Okay, we have 12 alders in favor.
All right. Anybody need a quick break? Huh? Okay, let me grab the door and make sure that TV station is logged out, and we'll continue.